So what is a screenplay? Well, we live in a very different world now compared to when I started out. Movie screenplays are so readily available that I doubt there are many people who would not recognize the format from afar. They're also easier to read. The style of screenplay structure and format has favored a more readable screenplay over the years, with less description, more white space, and less unnecessary camera direction such as cut to and angle on. If you've not read many or any screenplays, then you must start reading straight away. Start with the movies you love. This shouldn't feel like a chore, but it is imperative that you gain an innate sense of screenplay format and style. You should read so many and become so familiar with it that you start describing mundane, everyday incidents in your head as if they were in screenplay format. Interior, kitchen, day. Howell opens the fridge. He rummages around for something to eat and clumsily knocks a carton of eggs onto the floor. The carton bursts open and broken eggs spill onto the tile. Howell: shit! He grabs a wad of kitchen roll and begins the laborious task of cleaning up. Then the door bursts open and the Terminator walks in. It holds out its hand to Howell. Terminator, come with me if you want to live. Alright, that last bit didn't really happen. In reality, I just cleaned up the eggs and had toast instead. But you also need to practice turning mundane moments into drama. So, back to our heading for this video. What is a screenplay? A screenplay is a dynamic blueprint for a movie. And like a blueprint for a building, it needs to be understandable by many different people, all of whom should be able to envision basically the same thing. Not necessarily exactly the same thing, but enough of a similar image in their minds to all work towards the same goal in production. It's dynamic because it's a living thing that is constantly changing. Many people will be involved in the creation and production of a screenplay throughout its life. However, for those of us trying to break into the industry, the screenplay has an additional and much more important purpose. It is a sales document. It is there to sell you. Even if we are lucky enough to sell this screenplay, the chances of it ever getting made are very slim. Unfortunately, the chances of any screenplay going into production are very slim. For instance, let's look at the IMDb page of super producer Brian Grazer. See that? That's all his projects in development. He has 80 projects currently in development across TV and film. Now, most of those will never get made, and Grazer knows it. His business is based on numbers. If he has enough projects going and gets a certain percentage into production, then his business thrives. But all of those projects need a script, and someone has to write it. But Grazer isn't stupid. He also knows that he can't pay superstar writer salaries for every one of them. So he needs to bring in the appropriate writer for each project based on availability, budget, experience, track record, and price of the writer. So if our script isn't going to get made, then what are we writing it for? Well, the primary purpose of this screenplay is to get us recognized. We are writing a spec script. This stands for speculative script, a screenplay written without any fee up front that the writer hopes to sell after the fact or use to gain attention. It is the recognized industry standard way for new writers to present themselves to producers as a commodity. We are writing something that needs to say, look how good I am. Buy this script if you want, but I am the best, new, cheap writer that you will find. Please hire me for your project that is already in development. There is definitely the opportunity to sell the screenplay, potentially for a lot of money. Some working writers make a good living continuing to write spec scripts alongside their other assignment work. For instance, Blake Snyder, the author of the hugely popular screenwriting manual Save the Cat, sold many spec screenplays over his career, some for over $1 million. However, he was actually only still credited with 2 films that actually went into production. Now, if this concept is anathema to you and you have a story that must get out into the world, then there are other routes to take. Make the movie yourself or take it the indie route as producer to find private financing. These routes become more and more viable each year as costs on low-budget productions plummet thanks to exponential increases in digital camera standards. There are also some very famous spec screenplay sales from new writers that did become movies. Andrew Kevin Walker was working at a record store when he wrote Seven. He called David Koepp to ask him to read his screenplay, and he did. Danny Rubin was a new writer being pitched to Harold Ramis for a project he was working on. As a writing sample, Rubin's agent sent Ramis Groundhog Day. Ramis enjoyed it so much that he dropped the project he was working on, bought Groundhog Day, and got it into production, working with Danny Rubin on the rewrites. But stories like these are very few and far between. For the vast majority of writers, their spec screenplays are fantastic pieces of work that open doors for them with producers and studios. These screenplays, however, are soon forgotten once the writer starts getting assignment work. Therefore, our spec screenplay must do more than just tell a story. It must tell it in a way that makes us stand out for all the right reasons. It must say, 1. I am totally adept at screenplay format. 2. I have a deep understanding of screenplay structure. 3. I am a natural storyteller. 4. My characters are authentic and engaging. 5. I can still surprise you and excite you no matter how many screenplays you've read today. And 6. You should hire me right away. Now, if you've already written a screenplay, does it say that? Does it say all of that? Because if not, we still have work to do. 1 or 2 things on that list are not good enough. It's not enough to have some fantastic dialogue in a story that makes no sense. It's not enough to have a bunch of funny scenes if the setup is illogical. It's not enough to have fantastic action sequences, but the characters are dull and cliched. Look, it would be great if we could send out our screenplay and have a major producer call us back and say, "Hey, I read your screenplay. Can't produce it as it is, but pages 32 to 36 were fantastic. I want to buy it and work with you to make the rest of this screenplay as good as those 4 pages." Why doesn't that happen? Because that producer has literally hundreds of other screenplays sitting on their desk waiting to be read. It makes no sense to take a screenplay that doesn't work and spend time and money to try and fix all those problems when they can just keep going through their screenplays until they find one that has no problems and is already perfect. But again, remember, the vast majority of their time, they're not even looking for a screenplay to produce. They're looking for a writer who has mastered their craft and is a lot cheaper than the star writers who already have produced credits to their name. That's the only way in. So that is the screenplay we are going to write. Now, I promise that reading screenplays, good and bad, will only serve to deepen your desire to be in the business of making these things. So sites such as Selling Your Screenplay by Ashley Scott Myers or Simply Scripts offer free access to such screenplays. To make it easier to get started, on my own site at screenwritingjourney.com, I've listed a bunch of screenplays that should definitely be on our immediate reading list. They are all exceptional examples of their craft. They may or may not be the genres that we usually enjoy, but that is not important here. What is important is that they are impeccably crafted screenplays, and that is what we want to study and understand. Just go to the site and click on Writer Resources. Also, always pay attention to writing credits to make sure you understand the industry. Movies can have various writers credited on the production draft. If names are separated by an ampersand, it means those writers work together as a writing team. If names are separated by and, it means they worked on the screenplay separately on different drafts, but ultimately both contributed enough to the final product to receive a full credit. Many additional writers might have worked on the screenplay, but they didn't contribute enough to the final product to get credited. Also, try to get access to unproduced screenplays from other beginner and up-and-coming writers. Now, some of these screenplays will be very difficult to get through, but trust me when I say that the things that make you want to throw the screenplay across the room in anger will appear in our own screenplays. We need to read them in other people's work to give us the best chance of avoiding them ourselves. So that's a screenplay. That's what we are now writing, and that's what will become the most important thing in our life.